Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. France dismisses the Easter truce declared by Russian President Vladimir Putin, labeling it a marketing operation aimed at appeasing Trump. Renewed offensive between Russia and Ukraine has dashed hopes of a US-brokered ceasefire. Early voting begins in Australia's federal elections, with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Labour Party taking a narrow lead. Around half of the eligible voters are expected to cast their ballots before official election day on the 3rd of May. Over 100 US universities, including Ivy League institutions, Princeton and Brown, sign a joint letter condemning what they call President Donald Trump's political interference in education. They say it is an unprecedented threat to American higher learning. Myanmar's military junta extends the post-earthquake ceasefire until the 30th of April, bowing to pressure from aid groups seeking smoother relief efforts. The truce follows a deadly 7.7 magnitude earthquake that killed over 3,700 people last month. And the US Federal Trade Commission sues Uber, accusing the company of misleading users by engaging in deceptive billing and cancellation tactics. The watchdog alleges Uber's practices violate consumer protection laws. Hello and welcome. Our top focus tonight is the call between South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two leaders spoke to each other yesterday and discussed the ongoing war in Ukraine. According to the statement from the Kremlin, Putin spoke about what he called the root causes of the conflict. He also touched upon the need for Russia's security guarantees and extended Freedom Day wishes to Ramaphosa. Now, South Africa has taken a neutral stance in the Russia-Ukraine war. It has consistently called for peace through dialogue. Ramaphosa's government has avoided taking sides, even though the US has accused it of arming Russia in 2023. South Africa has kept diplomatic communication open between both Kiev and Moscow. In 2023, he was a part of a group of African leaders who visited both countries to de-escalate the war.
That this war must be settled and there should be peace through negotiations and diplomatic means. That we are here to listen both to President Zelensky, and tomorrow we'll be listening to President Putin, and we do so with deep respect for the people of Ukraine, which we have expressed to President Zelensky, but also in recognition of the proposals that they have put forward as a peace formula.
This was back on the 16th of June in the year 2023. A day later, the same year, Ramaphosa was in St. Petersburg, Russia, and there he spoke to Putin in person and asked him to settle the war.
We do firmly believe that this war must be settled. and it must be settled through negotiations and through diplomatic means. We say so because this war is having a negative impact on the African continent and indeed on many other countries around the world.
Even though it didn't lead to any breakthroughs, it is in line with Ramaphosa's latest call with his Russian counterpart. However, South Africa's neutral stance has been questioned, especially given its ties to Russia through the BRICS group. The country has also been abstaining on several resolutions at the United Nations condemning Russia's war on Ukraine. In February this year, Ramaphosa spoke to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. After the conversation, he also invited him to visit South Africa. Reports say Zelensky's state visit is scheduled on the 24th of April. His visit comes amid the shifting U.S. priorities under Trump's leadership. With the Ukraine war showing no signs of ending, Ramaphosa's latest call with Putin, just ahead of Zelensky's scheduled state visit, outlines crucial role that South Africa could play to end the Russia-Ukraine war. And shifting focus to Kenya now, Kenyan President William Ruto is on a state visit to China, his first since taking office in 2022. He is also the first African leader to visit China this year. Now, President Ruto has embarked on a 5-day state visit to China. Ruto will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping, with high-stakes bilateral talks on the table. The two leaders are expected to sign multiple agreements spanning trade, manufacturing and agriculture. But high on the agenda is expected to be infrastructure. Now, President Ruto is pushing for the resumption of funding to extend the standard gauge railway, a critical link to connect Kenya with landlocked East African nations. But the project has been stalled due to funding shortfalls and to land compensation disputes. This brings us to a more contentious issue: debt. Kenya owes over $6 billion to China, most of it tied to these mega infrastructure projects. President Ruto is expected to engage Chinese officials on debt relief, seeking extended repayment terms. As Kenya struggles with fiscal pressure, shrinking revenue and growing public discontent. But talks are expected to be about more than just loans. They come at a time of shifting global tides. The escalating US-China trade war, triggered by Trump tariffs, has rattled global supply chains. And though Kenya has long been a strategic US ally, it hasn't been spared by Trump's 10% baseline tariffs. Though now paused for 90 days, they have impacted exports and strained ties between Nairobi and Washington. As per reports, Kenya is reassessing its dependence on traditional Western partners. Ruto's visit could offer an opportunity to leverage US-China tensions. As China is looking to Africa as a crucial trade partner, to seek new export markets and raw materials sources amid trade war with the US. So the outcomes of Ruto's visit will be watched closely, not just in Africa, but in Washington and beyond. And shifting focus now, as US President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs hit markets around the world, countries are scrambling for new trading partners. And for some, the answer is Africa. If fully imposed, Trump's reciprocal tariffs could hit Southeast Asia hardest, and Malaysia has been one of the worst affected. It faces a 24% duty under the Trump administration. It also finds itself caught in the crossfire of the US-China trade war. Malaysia is seeking closer engagement with the US, with its top commerce officials set for trade talks in Washington this week. But ahead of those talks, China, Malaysia's second biggest buyer, has issued a stern warning to its trading partners: don't cave to US demands. This pressure has made diversifying export markets crucial for Malaysia. And Africa is ready with the pitch. The East African nation of Uganda is hosting a landmark event in Malaysia. It's called the Pearl of Africa Business Forum and Expo 2025 and will take place for the next 2 days in Kuala Lumpur. The 2-day event is a first of its kind, with an African nation showcasing its investment potential in Southeast Asia. Top officials, including Uganda's finance and energy ministers, will offer investors a direct look at the country's economic future. They will pitch deeper trade and investment in agriculture, tourism, energy and minerals. Uganda, known for coffee and tea exports, is also rich in gold, copper and lithium. And for Malaysia, this initiative could be a chance to expand its footprint into Africa. Last year, Malaysia boosted trade with 8 African countries by 53%, according to government data. Total exports were worth $3.5 billion, mainly palm oil, petroleum products and machinery, to nations including Kenya, Egypt, Nigeria, Togo, Angola, Algeria, Ethiopia and Namibia. Now, Trump's Liberation Day tariffs could push Malaysia to be even more proactive in diversifying its trading partners. And it's not just Malaysia. Other countries too, from India to Turkey, are turning to Africa. And for the continent, this creates a golden opportunity to export agriculture and raw materials and to enter markets they previously couldn't compete in. But challenges remain on the African continent. Many countries still lack the infrastructure to rapidly scale up production. Last year, Malaysian energy giant Petronas announced its exit from South Sudan after 30 years of operations. This was due to soaring costs amid the war in neighboring Sudan, which damaged a critical export pipeline. So it might be high time Africa taps on the opportunity. It could emerge not just as an alternative, but as a strategic partner for countries like Malaysia. The shift could open new doors and signal a new era in South-South trade. And on to our final story for today. History could be in the making in the Vatican as speculation grows over who might be the next leader of the Catholic Church. Across Africa, prayers are currently being offered for Pope Francis. The pontiff passed away yesterday at the age of 88. He was battling health complications and recently suffered bouts of pneumonia. It was confirmed that he died from a stroke and irreversible cardiocirculatory arrest. As the world mourns, Africa finds itself both grieving and watching with anticipation. There is a possibility that the world might get the first black African pope after centuries. Africa is home to nearly 272 million Catholics. It accounts for nearly a fifth of the global Catholic population. And yet, for centuries, the Church's leadership has been dominated by Europe. In his decades of papacy, the Pope Francis began to change that shift, lifting African voices. He appointed more African cardinals and often reminded the Vatican of its responsibility to the global South. Now, in his passing, the depth of mourning in Africa is immense. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu described him as a quote-unquote tireless champion of the poor. South Africa's President Ramaphosa said his worldview on inclusion, and other African leaders echoed a similar sentiment. It's in that spirit that the name of Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana has emerged as a serious contender to succeed Pope Francis. If chosen, he would become the first black pope in modern times, and also only the second African in church history. Turkson rose in the Vatican circles over the years. He has spoken out on poverty, climate change, and inequality. He is a staunch defender of traditional church teachings, and at the same time has shown openness to evolving conversations. Turkson has challenged Africa's harsh LGBTQ+ laws And when Pope Francis sought a heavy hand in conflict-ridden South Sudan, it was Turkson who was sent. He was seen both as a spiritual man and a diplomat. Other names who are in contention are Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Basungu. The 65-year-old is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He leads 7 million Catholics in local church and is a revered voice among people in the African nation. For Africa, a black pope would mean a lot of things. It would mean diversity, representation, and recognition. For now, candles continue to burn in chapels. The mourning is real, but there is also a steady hope that the world's next pontiff might come from Africa. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
It's over! He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams here today.
Right, welcome to First Sports. I'm Rupa Ramani. Let's get the show started. On the show today, what is it with the Cricket Board associations and the IPL franchises being at loggerheads? The pitch row at Kolkata seems to be hotting up, with the CAB, the Association of Bengal, trying to mute commentators now for speaking out about the discord. BCCI has been roped in. What's the latest? Pakistan and controversies are an